I want to start today with a question for you. Why don't we always do what we tell ourselves we want to do, like organizing our spaces and our time and our minds for beautiful living? We talk about it on this podcast a lot, the five principles, the idea that your home, your schedule, your daily routines can all work together to support the life you actually want. But here's something I rarely say directly. Most of us already know what we want our lives to feel like, right? We want a home that supports us instead of working against us. We want time for the things that bring us joy. We want to stay connected to the people we love. We want to feel well. None of that is a mystery. And yet there's this gap between knowing what we want and actually living it. Now, I used to think that the fact that I didn't achieve certain goals or complete certain tasks was a failure on my part, that it was a character flaw of mine. But of course, that's not true. So, what is it then? What's actually in the way? I've thought about this a lot, and I think it comes down to three things, these three barriers that show up in my own life and in the lives of almost every woman I've worked with. Today, we're going to explain all three and then talk about a specific answer for each one. The third barrier, not having the time or not knowing how to get started inside an already full life, that's the one I've been testing personally with a project that has been sitting on my list for way longer than I intended. And when I finally got tired of talking myself out of starting it, I did what I always do. I went to the research. There's a built-in bench in my bathroom. This space was built out 5 years ago. 5 years. You heard me right. And for all of those 5 years, I've wanted to make a cushion for it, like a 3-inch thick cushion, bench cushion, a lot like the one that I made for our mudroom built-in bench. So before you tell me this, yes, of course, I could have bought a cushion for it, but I like to create these things. I really want to make this myself, to spend the time thinking about the details and crafting it myself. I don't even really know how to sew. I mean, push comes to shove, I can read a pattern and cut the fabric and all that. But the cushion I made for my mudroom, I basically just did it myself. I made up the directions as I went. I made mistakes, undid some stuff, redid it a different way until it was done. I love the process of troubleshooting and then seeing the finished product. It's about creating. And so I've been sitting with this project for 5 years now. I have made some progress though. I had to troubleshoot the structural strength of the bench itself before I even started because it wasn't really built to my specifications. And after I decided what I could do about that, I found and I purchased the foam that will be the insert for this cushion. That took me a year to decide on. Yeah. And those two pieces, the foam and the base that's going to build some structure into the bench, those two pieces have been sitting in my house for the past 4 years. It is time to get this done. Now, a lot has happened in those 4 years, of course, a lot of family things, health things, work things, all kinds of things that pushed this to the back burner. But in January this year, I finally decided to finish the cushion. So this project is my test case today, and I'm running this experiment right alongside you in real time. This is episode 109, and today we're doing something a little different. We're going to talk about the why before we talk about the how. So first, I'm going to tell you 3 real reasons why I think organizing for beautiful living doesn't happen even when we want it to. These aren't excuses, they're actual barriers. Then I'll give you one practical answer for each of them, including the research-backed steps that I'm using on my own stuck project right now. And I'll walk you through the steps so you can apply them to whatever has been sitting on your list for a while. And by the end of this episode, you'll know which barrier is most in your way right now, and you'll have a specific starting point for this week. So barrier 1 is that we don't know what beautiful living actually looks like for us. And by us, I mean your family, your home, in this phase of your life. If you don't have a clear picture of what you're actually organizing toward, you can declutter a drawer and still feel like nothing changed. You can do a whole spring clean and still feel vaguely dissatisfied. You can check things off of a list and still feel like the house doesn't work. This happens more than we hear about, I think, because women and men, I don't mean to say that only women go through this, but people who hired a professional organizer to organize their kitchen and pantry, let's say, while they were at work each day. And then on the last day, they came home to a beautifully organized, color arranged, custom labeled space. But then I've gotten calls to come in because somehow all of that wasn't working. Something was still off. Something didn't work. It was slowly crumbling. And listen, this is what I do, right? I diagnose the problem and I fix it to work for you, for your family. So, given time and energy, anyone can organize a pantry if they want to. But beautiful living is personal, and organizing a pantry is just one small piece of it. Think about connection. You might know that you want more of it, more social connection, but just saying, I want more connection is not a compass. What does that actually look like for you? Is it a standing dinner with a small group of close friends once a month? Is it being able to invite someone over on a Tuesday without any panic? Is it getting off your phone enough in the evenings so that you can actually talk to your kids and your partner? Without that specific picture, you just feel vaguely disconnected and you don't know where to start. The same goes for health. You know, you want to feel better, to move more, to sleep well, but feel better is not a plan. What does thriving daily actually look like for you right now in this time with your work schedule and your kids' schedule? What's the one physical habit that would make the biggest difference? What does your body need that it's not getting? Without that clarity, the health goals stay vague and the busy days stay busy and nothing shifts. And for hobbies and creative work like my cushion project, it's the same pattern. There's a version of beautiful living that includes making things or learning things or doing things purely for the joy of doing them. But if you haven't defined what that looks like for you, it stays in the category of, oh, someday when I have more time. It looks different depending on whether your home is your family's social hub or if it's your daily launch pad. It looks different if you have young kids versus teenagers who are almost out the door. It looks different if connection is your highest value versus calm or flexibility or health or your own identity. And that's a big one, isn't it? Every person reaches an age when they start to rethink their identity. Well, without all that clarity, you're making decisions about your space and your time without a compass. And that's exhausting because the effort you put in never quite yields the results that you really wanted. Barrier two is that we don't have the skills and the learning curve feels high. Organizing is a skill, decluttering is a skill, managing a home in a sustainable way is a skill. And most of us were never taught any of it. We absorbed what we saw growing up. We tried things that didn't stick. So we kind of concluded that we were just doing it wrong or that we just weren't organized people or that other men and women had some natural ability for this that we just lacked. And that story, I'm not an organized person, becomes a reason to stop trying. But the skills gap isn't only about organizing spaces, it shows up across every dimension of beautiful living. Building and maintaining friendships as an adult is a skill. And honestly, it's not one that most of us were ever explicitly taught. When you're in school, connection happens by proximity and repetition, the same people every day in the same building. But in your 40s and 50s, it requires intention. It requires initiating, following through, being the one who says, hey, let's put something on the calendar. A lot of women I know feel serious loneliness while honestly having no idea how to address it because building adult friendships from scratch feels awkward and unfamiliar. So they don't. They wait for it to happen naturally, the way it used to, and it doesn't. Starting a new hobby or getting back to a creative space is also a skill. Specifically, it requires knowing how to protect small pockets of time, how to lower the bar enough so that starting feels possible, how to resist the pull towards perfectionism that makes a thing feel way too hard to begin. My cushion project has every one of these obstacles in it. And building health habits, movement, sleep, eating in a way that actually supports your energy, those require knowing how to design routines that work with your actual life, not the idealized version, right? That's a skill, a learnable one. But most of us are trying to figure it out by willpower alone, which is why the gym membership starts strong in January and it's gone by March. The learning curve for learning these skills feels really steep when you're already running at full capacity. To learn something new, you need mental space. And when you're managing work and kids and a household and everything else that comes with this stage of life, that space is limited. So we default to what we know, even when what we know isn't working. The result is that all of it, the organizing, the friendships, the creative works, the health habits, it all stays on the list as something we'll figure out someday when things slow down a little. And as most of us have discovered, things don't really slow down, right? Like ever. So we need a better system. Okay, barrier 3 is that we don't have the time or we don't know how to make it. This is the most common thing I hear. And I want to be really honest because I'm not going to tell you that I don't have time is always an excuse. Sometimes it truly isn't. In some stages of life, we are actually packed to the brim and we do not have time to add something new in. But here's what I've noticed and what the research confirms. A lot of the time, the problem isn't really the hours. It's that we don't know how to get a new thing started inside of an already full life. So the project just sits on our mental list. We think about it, we intend to get to it, but there's no clear on ramp. So it stays where it is. It's on the list in the back of our mind, slowly draining our energy. Like I envision a tiny trail of energy seeping out of the back of my head, even when we're not consciously thinking about it. My cushion project is exactly this. I've had the time, technically, but every time I approached it, the starting felt hard and the decisions felt overwhelming and I ended up doing something else. That's not a time problem. That's a starting problem. And it turns out there's really good research on exactly that. So that's where we're going next. Let's look at one answer for each barrier. Okay. So in answer to barrier 1, we don't know what beautiful living actually looks like for us, are the 5 principles of organizing for beautiful living. If you don't have a clear picture of what you're organizing toward, the answer is to build one. And the 5 principles of beautiful living are the framework for that. They're designed to be personal by definition. And the 5 principles are live light, love your home, connect often, work to live well, and thrive daily. Live light is about simplifying what you own, choosing quality over quantity, and making choices that are sustainable. It's not extreme minimalism. It's about having less to manage so there's more room physically and mentally for what actually matters to you. Love your home is about creating spaces that you want to be in, spaces that work for the life that you're living right now, not the life you were living a decade ago or the life that looks good in a picture. And it's knowing that even when things get messy, because they will, because you actually live there, a quick reset is all it takes to feel good in your space again. Connect often is about designing your home, your time, and your digital life so that connection with people is easy. Having someone over without it being a production, evenings that aren't entirely consumed by managing the house or finishing work that consistently creeps into your personal evenings and weekends. Work to live well is about making sure that the work you do is in service of the life you want. Your career ambitions are real and they matter, but so does the rest of your life. This principle is about strengthening both. And Thrive Daily is about your physical and mental well being. Your environment either supports your health and your daily habits or it works against them. Thrive Daily is about making sure that it's doing the former. Okay. You don't have to relate to all 5 equally. Most people have 1 or 2 that feel most alive or top of mind for them right now. That's your compass. That's what you're organizing toward. When you're standing in front of a closet trying to make decisions, or trying to figure out how to spend a Saturday morning, you've got something real to measure against. Episode 78 goes a little deeper on each of these. I'll put the link in the show notes so you have a chance to listen to that one. An answer to barrier 2, we don't have the skills and the learning curve feels high, is the Clear 5 framework. If the barrier is that you don't have certain skills and the learning curve is pretty high, the answer is a framework that removes the guesswork. You don't have to figure out how to do any of this from scratch. You follow a system that's already been worked out. And the Clear 5 framework is the one I use with every client and in my own home and in my life. These are 5 steps in sequence that spell out the word clear: clarify, limit, edit, assign homes, and review. And while I talk about it most often in the context of organizing physical spaces, these 5 steps apply across every area of organizing for beautiful living. Clarify is where you define your vision. For a space, that means asking, how do you want it to feel? And what does this space need to support in your daily life? For a health habit, it means asking, what does thriving daily actually look like for me right now? Not in theory, like I should weigh 130 pounds and have well-defined shoulders and a flat tummy, but in the life I'm actually living with the stress of my kid applying to college or trying to find a job. For connection, it means, what does connect often look like specifically for me and my family? Is it one dinner out a month? Is it a standing walk with a friend? Or being able to have people over without a week of preparation? And clarify also includes naming what you don't know how to do, right? So I want to work out 3 times a week, but I have no idea what I should be doing that's worth my time and energy. Well, this is a moment to lay out how I think I would learn this. Hire a personal trainer, follow an online workout plan. Without clarify, every other step of getting something done in any of these areas is just guessing. Limit is about setting natural boundaries so that things don't sneakily expand beyond what you can sustain. For spaces, it's one drawer for miscellaneous tools, or one bin per category, one basket for the daily stuff. For your schedule, it's deciding in advance how many commitments you can carry at one time and then holding that line. For hobbies and creative work, it's giving the project a specific amount of time per week, let's say, rather than just leaving it open-ended, which usually means it doesn't happen. When the limit is full, well, something has to leave before something new comes in. Edit is where you make the keep or release decisions with your clarify vision at the front of your mind. For physical stuff, that's deciding what stays and what goes, right? Well, for your calendar, it's looking honestly at all of your commitments and asking which ones actually support the life that you defined and clarify, and which ones are just habit or obligation. This is one of the harder steps because editing your time and your commitments requires the same kind of very real honesty with yourself that editing your closet does, okay? Assign homes means giving everything a clear, logical space that matches how you actually live. For physical items, that's the spot where they will actually get put back, not where they technically fit. For habits and goals, it means scheduling them when you'll actually do them, not simply because it's commonly done at a certain time. A health habit that isn't on the calendar, or it's on at 5 a.m. when you're barely scraping your eyes open at 6:30, well, that's a hope, not a plan. A creative project that doesn't have a dedicated time slot will always lose to the urgent thing that shows up instead. And review, the 5th step, is the weekly check-in. Mine happens on Fridays. I take 5 minutes to ask what's working, what's creating fiction, what needs a small adjustment. Systems drift over time in your home and in your schedule and in your habits. That's natural. Review is what catches that drift before it turns into a full collapse, like that beautiful pantry that slowly stops getting used the way that it was set up. That's the Clear 5 framework. And what I love about it is that it gives you a repeatable process, whether you're tackling a single drawer, rebuilding a morning routine, or figuring out how to actually make time for the creative work that keeps getting pushed aside. You start with clarify and you follow the steps. The skill builds as you use it. And an answer to barrier three, we don't have the time or we don't know how to make it, is to look at what the research says about starting. Okay, so this is the barrier I've been facing lately where my cushion project comes in. Willpower is not the answer to the time and starting problem. I want to yell this from the top of a mountain, especially to people who just say, just work hard and you'll get what you want. If willpower were the answer, we'd all be as fit and as healthy as we wanted to be. We'd have accomplished every goal we've ever set out for ourselves. We'd have the organized home, the consistent habits, the regular dinners with friends. But that's not real life. Real life has variables that play a role in whether we do the things we tell ourselves we want to do or not. We have energy levels that shift, competing priorities, mental health ups and downs, seasons of more and less capacity, weeks where everything runs at full speed, and weeks where you're just trying to keep up. Willpower alone can't stand up against all of that. So, what does hold up? Specific plans attached to specific triggers and starting steps so small that resistance doesn't have any traction. That's what the research says. And I'm going to walk you through 4 steps based on that research right now. So, step 1 is to acknowledge the pull of an unfinished task, then give it a plan. So, I want to start with something that I think will make you feel a lot better about this whole business of not being able to do what you want to do. Back in the 1920s, a psychologist named Maria Ovsiankina found something specific about human behavior. When people start a task and get interrupted before finishing it, they have a natural tendency to want to go back and complete it. That pull towards the unfinished task is real. Researchers found that people spontaneously returned to unfinished tasks about 2/3 of the time without being asked. A 2025 meta-analysis reviewed nearly 100 years of research and confirmed it. The tendency to want to resume interrupted tasks keeps showing up, and it's called the Ovsiankina effect. And here's the part that matters the most for today for us. That pull towards completing that unfinished task is stronger when the task is something personally important to you. So for you, the woman who keeps thinking about the closet she wants to organize, but just hasn't, the friend she means to call, but hasn't, or for me, the creative cushion project I keep meaning to get back to, but I haven't, that feeling is not failure. It's evidence that the goal matters to us. The pull you feel toward the unfinished thing is your investment in it showing up in your mind. It tells you that not that you're failing in doing these things that might be easy compared to your work or raising children. Instead, it tells you that these tasks are worth it. They're meaningful to you personally, that you shouldn't give up on them, right? Now, that pull can become just background noise in the middle of life and work. And that's where some research from 2011 comes in. E.J. Masicampo and Roy Baumeister published a study where they found that unfinished goals that matter to us create what they call goal-related cognitive interference. In plain language, when you have an unfinished goal that matters to you, your mind keeps a small piece of its attention pointed at it, even when you're trying to focus on something completely different. Think of it like a browser tab that's always open on your computer. You're not looking at it right now, but it is using some of your mental energy. In the study, this showed up as thoughts about the unfinished tasks, and it showed up as words related to those unfinished goals, staying mentally top of the people's minds. And it also showed up as a slightly degraded performance on unrelated work. The unfinished goal was taking up space in their minds. Does that sound familiar? That low grade awareness of the thing you haven't done yet, the way it surfaces when you're trying to sleep or when you're in the middle of something else. That's exactly what the research is describing. Now, here's what Mesicampo and Baumeister found that surprised people. The fix is not necessarily finishing the task, because clearly that would be a fix. But the fix is also just making a specific plan for it. When participants wrote down a specific plan for an unfulfilled goal, the intrusive thoughts stopped. The background noise became quiet. Their minds received a credible next step and trusted that the goal had somewhere to go, that they would be able to complete it. Now, for my cushion project, it's been living in my mind as this open loop. I'll be starting dinner and think about, gosh, I really wish I had done that already. How nice would it be for that space in the bathroom to be done? We'd really enjoy it. And all the feelings come up, right? Failure, sadness at all the time that's passed, the whole gambit. But by working through this plan out loud today, I'm making it specific and real. The first concrete action is to choose the fabric by a real deadline. I already have 3 constraints in mind. The fabric has to be cotton canvas, has to be machine washable, and it has to be in my specific colorway. What was missing all this time was a committed plan with a date attached. So I'm setting that deadline. I have 1 week from today to pick the fabric. In order to make that happen, I have to schedule time to search for the fabric or it'll never get done. So looking at my calendar, I know I can make time on Friday afternoon. I'll set an appointment on my calendar for an hour on Friday afternoon to pick and order the fabric. It's already getting exciting. So for you, think of one thing that has been living in the back of your mind. Write it down. Then just write one specific next action and a real date. You can write it as, I will do X by Y, the date. That's step 1. The background noise around it will quiet down almost immediately. Okay, the second step, step 2, is to build the when then. So now we have a plan, but a plan still has to survive contact with everything else that's going on in your life when the moment to act actually arrives. And this is where a lot of good plans just poof, they just crumble, they get pushed aside. Peter Gallwitzer is a professor of psychology at NYU and at the University of Constance. In 1999, he published a paper introducing what he calls implementation intentions. Then in 2006, he and a colleague published a meta-analysis of 94 independent studies, meaning they looked across these 94 studies and more than 8,000 participants to see if the idea still held up. What they found was that people who made a specific when-then plan were significantly more likely to actually follow through on their goals. It didn't matter what kind of goal it was or who the person was or what was going on in their life. The plan worked. An implementation intention is a specific, when X happens, then I will do Y plan. That's the when then. And the reason it works is that it takes the decision out of the moment when you feel you might want to start. You don't need to feel motivated when the trigger arrives. You've already decided. So the trigger fires and the action follows. Your environment does the work for you. Gallwitzer is clear that the trigger has to be something that already happens in your existing day, something reliable. Okay. So when I feel like it is not a trigger. When I pour my morning coffee could be. When I put the kids to bed, when I sit down at my desk on Saturday morning. You need to use what already exists in your routine for this to work. And here's a quick example. Someone wants to keep the kitchen counter clear at night. The general intention is, I need to stop letting things pile up. And the when then can be, when I finish putting the kids to bed, then I will spend 5 minutes clearing the counter before I sit down. The trigger already happens every night anyway. I always put the kids to bed every night. The action is attached to it. She doesn't have to remember or feel motivated. She just follows the chain that she already set. For my project, I have a deadline for choosing the fabric. Now I need a when then for the actual search for the fabric session, right? And I'm pre deciding one more thing. I will search one site only with my 3 criteria already written on a sticky note before I even open that tab, okay? The rabbit hole that swallowed me the last time cannot happen if the boundaries are already in place before I start. So I won't lose time. So my when then will be when I make my afternoon tea on Friday, then I will complete the search for fabric and place the order within 1 hour, looking only within my 3 criteria. For you, take the project from step 1 that you picked. Find a moment in your existing day that already reliably happens and attach your next action to that moment and write it down. When X happens, then I will Y. Step 3 is to make the first step smaller. Now we have a plan and we have a trigger, and we still might feel resistance when the moment actually arrives. That flicker of, I don't feel like it right now, or this is going to take forever. That's normal. And there's a pretty practical answer for it. James Clear is the author of Atomic Habits. It's a practical framework for behavior change that draws on behavioral science. One of the most useful ideas in his book is the 2-minute rule. When starting any new behavior, shrink the starting action down to something that takes 2 minutes or less. The goal is not to accomplish everything in 2 minutes. The goal is to get started, because starting is where the resistance is. Once you've already started something, continuing is much easier. The obstacle is always the moment just before you begin. A couple of examples here. Let's say someone has been meaning to go through her nightstand drawer for weeks. Well, the 2-minute start might be to just take everything out of the drawer and put it on top of the nightstand. She doesn't have to decide what to keep yet. She doesn't sort anything. She just empties the drawer. But once everything is visible in front of her, some sorting almost always follows, even if it's just tossing the old junk that collected there. Or the exercise habit, where every morning she spends 10 minutes trying to figure out which sports bra to use, and then where is the water bottle, and then she's running late. The 2-minute setup happens the night before when she puts both things in one spot. That's it. The next morning, the resistance is already gone before it even had a chance to show up. Clear's point, and I think about this a lot in the context of organizing, is that environment design matters as much as intention. When your environment makes the first step easy, then you don't have to rely on motivation. The path of least resistance for you should be whatever you want to do, right? For my project, the 2-minute setup happens before my when then moment arrives, okay? I open the browser tab to the one site that I've decided to use, and I write my 3 criteria on a sticky note, and I put it on my laptop. Cotton canvas, machine washable, and the blue colorway that I want. When the trigger fires, I make my afternoon tea and I sit down. Everything is already in place. For you, before your when then moment arrives, remove one friction point. Open the browser tab, or put the supplies out, or write down the criteria. Set up the starting line so that when the moment comes, starting should feel almost automatic. And step 4 is to chain the next action. This is a step you might skip, and it's the reason projects can stall even after you've got a really strong start. So here's the problem. You start the project, it seems to be going well, and then a few days or weeks pass, life fills back in, the project that had some momentum just drifts back into the background, and the open loop reopens. A few weeks later, you're back at step 1, right? You're back at, let me make a plan. What I've taken from both Gallwitzer's when then research and James Clear's idea of habit stacking, where the completion of one action becomes the trigger for the next, is this: build the next specific plan before you finish the current step. The practical version of this is simple. I finish the fabric search, but before I close my laptop, I write, When the fabric arrives, I will then bring it immediately to my sewing table and open my calendar to pick a cutting date. That is the next when then. I write it down in my reminders app before I just drop my fabric on my table and walk away. This way, the project stays warm. Yeah. The gap between steps is also where perfectionism tends to creep in. When there's an unstructured pause, that's when the thoughts start to rise up. Am I doing this right? Should I reconsider? Maybe I should research more first. Chaining the next action closes that gap before it can open. You already know what comes next, and all you have to do is follow the chain. And notice what this does to the open loop from step one, the make a plan step. Every time you complete a step and immediately write the next when then, the project doesn't just remain unfinished. Your mind trusts that there's a plan, so the background noise can stay quiet. So again, my chain is that when the fabric arrives, I'm going to drop it off on my sewing table and I'm going to schedule a date and time to do the cutting. For you, when you complete the next action on your stuck project, before you put it away and walk away, write the next when then for exactly what comes next. The smallest step, the 2-minute thing that you can do next, that keeps the chain going. So let's just pull this all together. We started today by naming the 3 real barriers that get between us and organizing for beautiful living. The first one is not knowing what beautiful living actually looks like for you and your family. The answer to that is the 5 principles, a framework for building your own personal compass so you know what you're organizing toward. And episode 78 goes deeper on each principle if you want to spend some time there. The second barrier is the skills gap. Organizing is a skill. It's learnable, and so is building adult friendships and starting a creative practice like sewing and designing health habits that actually stick. The Clear 5 framework gives you a system to follow across all of it. Clarify, limit, edit, assign homes, and review. So you're not figuring it out from scratch every time. The skill builds as you use it. The third barrier is time and starting. And the research is pretty clear on this one. The problem usually isn't the amount of time that you see available to you. It's the absence of a specific plan with a specific trigger and a friction-free starting point. So the 4 steps are: first, to make a specific plan with a real next action and a real date, and your mind will quiet the background noise around it almost immediately. Second, build a when then by attaching that action to a trigger that already exists in your day. Third, make the first step so small that resistance doesn't have anywhere to grab hold. And fourth, chain the next action before you walk away from the current one so the project stays warm. These steps work on organizing projects, but they work on friendship habits. They also work on creative things you've been meaning to get back to. They work anywhere a goal that matters to you has stalled. For me, the fabric for my cushion isn't ordered, but the plan is specific. The trigger is set. The starting line is ready. And the next when then, well, I've already written it down. So I'm in this experiment with you. And here's what I love most about all of this research. It isn't asking you to be a different person. It isn't asking you to want it more or to try harder or to be more disciplined. It's asking you to just design your path more carefully. The wanting is already there. You just need the design to match it. Now, yes, there are specific steps I just laid out, and it might feel complicated. It's not. We deliberately keep it simple. Once you know you're organizing for beautiful living compass, then everything else aligns to that. You'll find yourself choosing to do tasks that help you connect more or thrive daily or whatever you're wishing to focus on right now in your life. Then you're simply looking for how to do these things. You know you want to do them. And the 4 steps will help you actually do them instead of letting them slide or get sidelined by the 3 barriers that you might be facing. That is what organizing for beautiful living looks like in practice. So If this episode connected for you, here's what I'd love for you to do. Send it to a friend, text it to them, someone who has a stuck project. You probably already know who she is. She's probably mentioned it more than once. The thing that she keeps meaning to get to, or the space she wants to update, the call she needs to make, the project she keeps saying she'll get back to when things slow down. Send her this episode. Tell her you listened and you thought of her. That is also connect often in action, right? Okay. Have a beautifully organized week. I'm Z, and I'll see you on the next episode.